That's no moon.
Clear Bay 327. We are opening the magnetic field.
Oh, hello there. And welcome to Docking Bay 327. I'm Qui-Gon Tony. Happy Halloween, everyone. Today, we're going to be looking at... Hey, do you all mind? I'm trying to do a video here.
What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me.
The Empire will compensate you if he dies.
Anyway, today we're going to be looking at the most difficult and intimidating project I've worked on yet. A life-size replica of Han Solo in Carbonite. We're going to go through all the steps of how I built it, how I painted it and weathered it, and then of course a few shots of it in its current location in my Star Wars office. So, let's take a look. If you watched my last video on the stone stucco wall and are an avid Star Wars fan, you probably already figured out where I got the design and what was coming. Here's the scene that I wanted to replicate. I made some adjustments to fit my space by putting the panel on the left side, but you get the idea. This build all starts with the likeness of Han. I found an amazing maker on Etsy, Wes Koch, who sells the cast. If you ever decide to build one for yourself, you need to buy his cast. The level of detail is amazingly good. I'll put a link in the description below. Once the cast arrived, it was time to begin. I found the blueprints for the box on the Han and Carbonite Builders group on Facebook, which is an awesome source for information and inspiration. I'll put a link to that group in the description below as well. Now, the prop used in the movie isn't just a straight rectangle box. It tapers out on both sides, top and bottom, which definitely complicates things. But I started with what I know and measured and cut down all the sections out of 1/2-inch MDF. I carefully measured and marked out each hole on the sides for all 8 panels that will go in at a later date. I brad nailed and glued all the sides together. The tapered sides and top really look great and give the prop an added dimension. It wasn't easy, but definitely worth the extra time and effort. Next, I cut out the frame pieces and glued them all in place. Now it was time for all the sanding. I used this orbital sander for a lot of it. With MDF, you definitely want to wear a respirator. The amount of dust is ridiculous. So I sanded, and I filed, and I filed, and I sanded. And even after all of that, there were still gaps that needed to be filled. So I used this Bondo to smooth out the corners and the edges. It's pretty easy to use, but you don't have a lot of time to apply it once you've added the hardener and mixed it all up. I used small batches to keep from wasting too much. Next was, you guessed it, sanding, and more sanding, and more sanding. I swear it felt like I was sanding on this thing for weeks. Finally, I could move on to putting down a primer coat. Then it was time to lay out the cast and trace out where he would be attached. I then filled the hollow sections with expanding foam. Wes actually recommended this, so he wouldn't sound empty if anyone decided to tap on him. I wasn't sure how much to use, and as you can see here, I overdid it just a little. But it was easy enough to trim off the excess with a serrated blade. Then I used screws to secure him to the board. I then began pouring Elmer's glue to create the Carbonite. I made several pours over the next few days as each layer cured. It turned out pretty good, but there were a few areas that I wasn't completely happy with. I covered the entire front with a black primer just to see how all the textures would work together. The glue shrunk as it cured, so I decided to use some Drydex where the cast connects to the carbonite to create one consistent piece. I then added a clear coat to prepare the texture for weathering. I decided on a silver metallic spray paint for the overall coverage. It was amazing to see the prop come alive right before my eyes as I painted and weathered it. I then added a black wash to the entire carbonite area, including the cast of Han. The weathering not only made the texture pop, but it also dulled down the metallic coat so it wasn't too shiny. Finally, I covered the carbonite area with a piece of plastic and then painted the rest of the prop a glossy dark gray for that metal finish. Now, before we look at the full display in all its epic glory, I do have to mention that he's not entirely finished. There are 8 panels, 4 on each side, that I still need to build. Unfortunately, I just couldn't get those completed yet, and I just couldn't wait any longer to show you guys. So I will build those panels, and I'll be sure and film it, and then I'll post a part 2 video for the second half of the Han and Carbonite build. He still looks amazing though, and I couldn't be more pleased with the results. So now, I present to you Han and Carbonite. So there you go, a life-size Han and Carbonite replica for my Star Wars office. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, be sure and do that. You will subscribe to Docking Bay 327. Click the bell, that way you'll be notified as I push out new content each week. Stay safe, happy trick-or-treating, and until next time, build with what you know and figure out the rest. The next thing I know, Darth Maul has come jumping out, ready to attack me. Han me Bookie is such a good listener. I may have a couple schwatzkes in me, but I love you, man. I know.